Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine the computing world in, what, 1987.
Right.
Personal computers were still pretty new territory for a lot of people.
Definitely.
And the idea of you creating your own interactive software, your own little app, almost. Well, that was mostly for programmers, right?
Yeah, pretty much exclusively. Then Apple drops this thing, HyperCard. And it really felt, well, groundbreaking, almost mythical.
Yeah, mythical is a good word. It was aimed at letting anyone build stuff, not just coders. Like pure potential in a box.
And what's so cool for us in this deep dive is we're not just talking about it based on memory or old articles.
Oh, way.
We've got the original 1987 HyperCard User's Guide.
Yeah.
This is the source, how Apple actually introduced it.
Exactly. So our mission here is to, crack open this guide, dust it off, and really pull out the core ideas.
That's the essence of it.
Yeah, the surprising bits, how it actually felt to use it based on what Apple themselves were saying in 87.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
So jumping right in, according to this guide, what were the fundamental pieces, the building blocks?
Well, the guide starts right off with the basic unit. It calls it a card.
A card, okay.
Think of it literally like one screen full of information. A digital index card, sort of.
Simple enough.
Yeah, and it even notes, if you had a bigger screen, like a Mac 2, the card just appeared in a window. But the idea was the same. One card, one view.
Got it. So a card's the single unit, but you don't just have one card floating around, you group them.
Right, into a stack. A stack is just, well, a collection of cards. It's HyperCard's version of a document, or maybe even an application.
So the stack holds all the related cards and, I guess, the links and stuff between them.
Exactly. It's the whole package.
Okay, cards and stacks. And then on these cards, you have things you can interact with. The guide calls them objects, generally.
That's the term, yeah. Objects. And the two main ones you deal with constantly are buttons and fields.
Buttons. Pretty self-explanatory. Clickable things.
Pretty much. You click them, they do stuff. Link to another card, maybe open a different stack, run a program, or something more complex later on.
And the guide makes a point about how you click them, doesn't it? There's a specific tool involved.
Oh yeah, very specific. To make the button do its thing, you absolutely need the browse tool, the little hand cursor.
Right.
If you click a button with, say, the button tool active.
Ah, you're editing the button then, not using it.
Exactly. You select it to change it. That's a key thing. The guide hammers home for new users. Get the tool right.
Makes sense. Okay, so buttons do things. Where does the actual information, the text, live?
That goes into fields.
Yeah.
Fields are just designated areas on the card or the background, specifically for holding text.
And you use the browse tool for that too.
Yep. Click in a field with the browse tool, you get a cursor, you start typing.
Now, this next concept feels like maybe one of the most powerful ideas in HyperCard, according to the guide anyway. Backgrounds.
Oh, absolutely. Backgrounds were super clever. It's basically a shared template.
A template? How so?
So a background can have its own picture, its own fields, its own buttons.
Yeah.
And any card you link to that background, it shows all those shared elements.
Okay, wait. So if I put a company logo on the background,
It appears on every card using that background, same position, everything.
and if I put a name field on the background,
Every card gets that same name field in the same spot. The field is shared, but the text you type into it on each card is unique to that card.
okay. So background stuff is shared, but then you can add other things just to one specific card, like a unique picture or a button only for that card.
Precisely. That's the core distinction. Background layer shared. Card layer unique to that card. It's how you build consistency without, copying and pasting the same logo onto hundreds of cards.
Super efficient. And to actually build all this, create the fields, draw the pictures, you need different tools.
Right. The guide lays out the main ones. The browse tool, we mentioned that for clicking buttons and typing in fields.
The hand cursor.
Then the button tool for making and changing buttons. The field tool for making and changing fields.
Got it.
And then a whole set of paint tools for graphics, drawing directly onto the card or the background.
Okay, so you've got the structure cards, stacks, objects, backgrounds, and the tools. How do people actually, get around, explore?
Right.
I calls it browsing, yeah.
Browsing, exactly. That's HyperCard's word for just moving through cards in a stack or jumping between stacks.
And the main way is clicking buttons using the browse tool.
That's primary, yeah. Click a button, follow the link. Simple. Assuming you're using the browse tool.
Right, always the browse tool. But the guide also talks about the Go menu being important for navigation.
Oh, the Go menu is indispensable. You had commands like home. That takes you to your home stack.
Which is like your main menu for HyperCard.
Kinda, yeah. Often a graphical directory showing all your stacks. Very important stack. Then there was recent. That one was cool.
What did recent do?
It showed you thumbnails, like little pictures of the last 100 cards you visited. So you could visually find where you were and jump right back.
100 cards? Wow, that's a lot of history.
Yeah, pretty deep backtracking. And then the basics. Back, which steps back through those 100 places one by one. And first, last, previous, next card in the current stack.
Standard stuff. What if you needed to find specific text? Like searching.
For that, you typically use the message box. It's a little floating window where you could type commands. You type find, and then whatever text you were looking for.
Find meeting notes or something.
Exactly. And HyperCard would search through the stack. The guide even shows how to be more specific, like find budget in field project name.
So you could target the search. Nice. And there's that little detail the guide uses. Cards are like being looped on a ring.
Yeah, I like that description. It just means navigation wraps around. If you go next from the last card,
You end up back at the first card.
right, no dead ends within the stack itself.
Okay, and here's something that, wow, must have felt really different back then. Maybe even a bit nerve-wracking for people used to other software. The guide specifically says, no save command.
That's a huge point from the source. HyperCard just saved
Automatically.
all the time as you worked. Typed something, drew something, moved to another card, bam, saved instantly. No need to hit Command plus S.
Which means...
It changed how you thought about working. You didn't have that safety net of, oh, I messed up, I'll just close without saving. Your changes were live, for better or worse.
Autosave in 1987. That's wild. Okay, so you've got the system, you know how to browse, but where did people get these stacks from in the first place?
Good question. The guide actually lists a few ways. First, stackware. That was basically commercial software sold as HyperCard stacks.
So you could buy pre-made applications or databases.
Exactly. Then, a huge source mentioned is Macintosh user groups.
Yeah.
People were creating their own stacks and sharing them like crazy within these groups.
A real community thing.
Totally. And even back then, they mentioned early online services, like CompuServe and Genie. You could download stacks from there. Often free, though you paid for the online time, of course.
Wow. Online distribution, even then.
Yeah, and they even printed an 800 number in the guide, 1-800-538-9696, to help you find a user group near you.
An 800 number. That really shows how important they thought the community sharing aspect was. And speaking of essential things, the guide stresses the home stack. You needed that one.
Foundational. Couldn't even run HyperCard without it. It was your starting point, your home base, and, critically, it held the user preferences card.
Ah, settings. And the big setting there was your user level, wasn't it?
Probably the most important setting. It controlled what you were allowed to do in HyperCard. The guide lists 5 levels.
Yeah, levels like what?
Browsing was the simplest, just looking and clicking buttons. Typing let you enter text in fields. Painting unlocked the graphics tools. Authoring let you create and modify buttons, fields, cards, backgrounds, basically build stuff.
And the scripting. That unlocked the HyperTalk programming language for really custom actions. Maximum power.
So you set your level globally. But what if a specific stack was locked down more?
The guide says the lower level wins. So if you were set to authoring but opened a stack protected at the piping level, you could only type in that stack, not change its structure. It let creators protect their work.
Smart. And if you needed help understanding all this,
2 options, really. HyperCard had its own built-in help stack, quick lookups, searchable electronic, a good example of HyperCard itself.
right,
But for the deep dive, the real details, you needed the physical book, the user guide we're looking at. Manual lookup required.
Okay, so moving beyond just using stacks, the real magic maybe was in customizing and creating, making it your own. The guide makes it clear you didn't have to, but
But that's where the fun was. The guide calls this authoring, making new stacks or changing existing ones.
and making a new stack often started from where you were. Yeah, typically it would copy the background of the current card, give you a starting point, a template, and you could easily copy buttons, fields, pictures from other stacks you liked, reuse components.
And this brings us back to that crucial idea, working on the card versus working on the background.
Always have to keep that straight. You can edit things that live on the background while you're looking at a card, like resize a background field.
Okay.
But if you want to create a new button or field or graphic that will show up on all cards sharing that background,
Yeah,
you absolutely have to go into the background editing mode first.
got it. Let's dig into fields a bit more. How much could you customize them?
Quite a bit for the time. Use the field tool, grab a corner, resize it, drag it around, copy, paste.
Other stuff.
Never.
A big warning in the guide. If you delete a background field.
Oh.
Yeah. It doesn't just delete the field container. It deletes all the text that people entered into that field on every single card using that background.
Ouch. That's a major gotcha. Definitely. You had to be careful. But fields also had properties you could set. Give them names, choose a style transparent, opaque, rectangle, shadow, even scrolling for long text.
Scrolling fields. Okay.
You could lock the text, show lines like notebook paper, set margins, fonts, alignment, and even non-scrolling fields, the guide notes, could hold more text than you could see. It wasn't lost, just hidden.
Flexible.
Yeah.
And the visual side. Painting and graphics. HyperCard had actual paint tools built right in.
It really did.
Yeah.
A pretty decent set for '87. Lasso for selecting irregular shapes, brush, spray can, eraser, standard shapes like rectangle, oval, polygon, even a paint text tool.
Paint text. How's that different from a field?
Look to that. But yeah, all these tools were in a menu. And a cool usability trick the guide mentions.
The tear-off menus, I saw that.
Exactly. You could literally click and drag the tools menu or the patterns menu right off the menu bar, and they'd become little floating palettes.
So you didn't have to keep going back up to the menu while painting?
Right. Kept your tools handy. Very Mac-like.
And power keys. Sounds cool.
Yeah, it was just keyboard shortcuts for paint commands. Hold down the command key, press a letter, S for select or lasso, P for transparent.
Transparent?
Yeah, select a graphic, hit Command T, and the white background of the selection would become see-through. Useful for layering. D for darken, L for lighten, P for pickup, G for trace edges. Quick commands.
The guide also talks about modifier keys, like Shift and Option, changing how tools worked when you dragged them.
Standard Mac behavior, really. Hold Shift while drawing a line. Perfectly straight. Dragging a rectangle with Shift. Perfect square. Circle tool with Shift. Perfect circle.
Constraints.
Exactly. Option often did things like duplicating shapes as you dragged, or drawing shapes from the center out. Command could do things like shrink a selection tightly. Lots of little tricks.
And that pickup tool sounds different.
It was unique. The guide describes it like a cookie cutter. You select an area of your drawing, drag it over another pattern or image, use pickup,
Yeah.
and your selected shape gets filled with the pattern it was sitting on top of, like you picked up the texture underneath.
Huh. Interesting effect. And other effects, too. Darken, lighten, trace edges, invert.
Yeah, basic bitmap manipulations. Darken randomly turned white pixels black in your selection. Lighten did the opposite. Trace edges found outlines. Invert flipped black to white and vice versa. Rotate, flip. Pretty standard stuff, but nice to have built in.
How did you manage changes while painting? Undo?
Sort of. You had keep and revert. Think of keep as like, okay, I like the changes I've made so far, let's make them permanent. Revert would undo everything you did since the last keep.
So keep was like a checkpoint save for your painting session.
Exactly. And moving to another card or even just switching out of the paint tools automatically did a keep.
Ah, okay. And back to that paint text tool, why was it different?
Crucially different. When you type text with the paint text tool, as soon as you click somewhere else or switch tools, that text became pixels, part of the picture itself.
Not editable text anymore.
Nope. Baked into the bitmap. To change it, you had to erase it like any other part of the drawing and retype it. Completely unlike text in a field, which always stayed editable.
Big difference. Okay. Building blocks, navigation, content, graphics. But the in HyperCard, that came from interactivity, right?
Buttons and linking.
Absolutely. That's how you connected everything and made stacks dynamic. You used the button tool, specifically that tool to create new buttons or select existing ones to change their properties.
And then switch back to the
Browse tool to actually use the button, click it, make it go.
got it. Browse to use, button tool to modify. How easy was it to make a button link somewhere?
Pretty easy according to the guide. There was a link to feature. You'd click a link to button in the button settings.
Then what?
Then you just navigate using the normal Go menu or whatever to the destination card you wanted that button to link to. Could be in the same stack, could be in a totally different stack. Once you were there, you clicked OK or something similar, and HyperCard wrote the necessary little script snippet for that button automatically. Nice. Point and shoot linking. But the guide had a warning about links, didn't it?
A very important one. If you renamed a stack file in the Finder,
Oh, no.
yeah, any buttons and other stacks that link to the old name, broken, they wouldn't work anymore. HyperCard wasn't smart enough back then to track renames.
Ouch, that could cause chaos.
Yeah,
Good thing the guide warned people. Were buttons just text, or could they have pictures?
you could use icons. HyperCard came with a library of built-in icons, or you could add your own. Assign an icon to a button, much nicer visually. often clearer than just text.
And the ultimate level of interactivity,
Uh,
that was scripting.
right. The fifth user level. That's where you can write your own custom code using HyperTalk, the built-in language, make buttons do really complex things, calculations, interact with the system.
But the user guide didn't teach you HyperTalk.
No, it explicitly points you to a whole separate book,
Yeah.
the HyperCard Script to Language Guide.
Uh-huh.
Scripting was treated as the advanced topic for power users.
Makes sense. Okay, so beyond building and using, the guide also covered basic management stuff, right? Utilities.
Yeah, keeping things tight, you could get info. Card info showed the name, number, unique ID of the current card, plus how many card-level buttons and fields it had.
And stack info.
Gave you the bigger picture. Stack name, where it was saved, its size on disk, importantly, how much free space it contained.
Free space, what's that about?
The guide explains it. When you deleted things, cards, buttons, graphics, HyperCard didn't always immediately shrink the file size. It just marked that space as unused or free inside the stack file.
So the stack file could get bloated?
Exactly. Bigger and potentially slower than it needed to be if you did a lot of deleting. So the guide recommended using the compact stack command.
What did that do?
It basically rewrote the stack file, getting rid of all that internal free space, made the files smaller on disk, potentially faster, like defragging just for that stack.
A manual cleanup tool? Useful. And printing obviously was covered.
Oh wait, standard file menu stuff, print card, just the current one, print stack, and print report.
Print stack had options, right? Not just one card per page.
Lots of options. You could print full size or fit 2 cards, 4 cards, even 8 cards per page, I think. Different layouts, 2 standard pages, or a split page format designed for cutting and putting into those little mini binders. You could even tell it to pause for manual paper feed.
Pretty flexible. And print report, that wasn't printing the cards themselves.
No, that was about printing the data stored in the fields. You could choose which fields to print from which cards, all cards, or just cards using the current background.
How did it format the data?
You could choose formats like mailing labels or columns or just rows of data. For labels, the guide even shows you could visually drag to adjust the label size and spacing in a preview window. Really powerful for getting structured text out of HyperCard.
Okay, before we wrap this deep dive on the guide, there are some really cool historical footnotes in the guide itself. Little nuggets about how it was made.
Yeah, I love that stuff. The colophon, basically. They tell you exactly what tools they used to create the user guide document itself.
Like
a Macintosh Plus, running Microsoft Word, even back in '87. Printed on a LaserWriter Plus, using PostScript-T, graphics done in MacPaint, Adobe Illustrator, and even HyperCard itself.
using the tool to document the tool.
Exactly. And they list the fonts. ITC Garamond, ITC Bafont Gothic, ITC Zaf Dingbats Apple Courier. It's such a perfect snapshot of high-end desktop publishing tech for that specific moment.
A little time capsule right there in the back of the book. And the Tell Apple About questionnaire, that feels like something from another planet now.
Doesn't it? A physical tear-out form in the back of the manual.
What did it ask?
Rate the software. How are you using it? What kind of Mac do you have? What peripherals? Any suggestions for improvement? You filled it out with a pen, tore it out, put a stamp on it, and mailed it back to Apple.
Pre-internet user feedback right there. Amazing.
A direct line via the postal service. Just a fascinating glimpse into how user research worked back then.
So looking back at everything we've pulled from this 1987 guide, what's the big takeaway? What was HyperCard really about according to its own introduction?
I think it really hammers home that HyperCard was meant to be revolutionary in its accessibility. It wasn't just software. It was presented as this environment. A tool for thinking, organizing, yes, but mostly for empowering regular people to create interactive stuff.
Without coding, initially.
Right. The stack card metaphor, the visual linkings, the built-in paint tools, the whole background card layer thing,
Yeah.
the user levels. It was all architected to lower the barrier to entry for making things happen on a computer.
You really get that feeling from the guide. It's not just instructions, it's an invitation. Come build things.
Absolutely. It feels like Apple's vision for the Mac as a creative appliance really shining through, not just a tool for specialists.
So here's something to chew on as we finish up. Think about the digital world now.
Okay.
All these concepts we just dug out of a 1987 manual, linking information together, hypertextually, user-generated content, visual interfaces for building things, distinct pages or screens connected by links.
Right.
How much of that DNA is still present? How much of HyperCard's core ideas are just everywhere now? In the websites, the apps, the tools you use every day, maybe without even realizing where some of those fundamental concepts were first made accessible to so many people.